By what name are you known?
There are some who call me Tim.
Welcome to another episode of Timmy Talks, the channel where we talk old school magic. And today we are looking at the third round of the Frost Giant Cup here in the Netherlands, Hilversum. And we have two very interesting decks facing each other today. On one side we have a deck called Lance, and on the other side we have a deck called Frosty Good Stuff, and that's played by the player on the right by Joep, and he's actually the tournament organizer of the Frost Giant Cup. Now before I go to the games, I actually have deck pictures this time of both the decks, so I'm going to discuss them with you. Now if you'd like to go directly to the games, you can do that by looking at the description below. There you will find a timestamp. Click on the timestamp and it will take you directly to game number 1. The first deck that we are going to look at is the deck Lance, and this deck is played by Koos, but it's actually designed by MtG, a German old school player. And this is the list, and it looks very interesting. I see a lot of lands. Obviously that goes very well with the fast bonds and also the Simbats. I see 2 fireballs, so that could be a win con. I see of course also the Mishra's Factories, but an interesting card in this build is definitely the Mirror Universe. So it looks like he wants to hold his opponent at bay and then use his Sylvan Libraries to inflict some damage upon himself, and then use the Mirror Universe to switch life totals and perhaps finishing it with a Fireball or a Factory. Another way, of course, of winning can also just be by building a huge Fireball, because he does have a lot of lands and he can quickly play them out because of the 2 fast bonds in his deck. So it looks interesting, and I'm curious to see how it works. The other deck we are going to look at is called Frosty Good Stuff, and it is designed and played by Joep. He is also the tournament organizer, and he's actually won the first edition of the Frost Giant Cup, so he's won his own tournament. And as you can see, he's put his winning Frost Giant in his deck. So usually players that win the tournament or expected to put the card that the tournament is named after in their deck, and most players put it in their sideboard, but as you can see, Joep has chosen to put it in his main board, which is pretty cool. And what we can see as well is some really nice flavorful creatures. I see another giant, I see a Shivan, a Rock Hydra, an Aladdin, I see some gargoyles, actually a full playset of them, so that's very flavorful. But don't underestimate this deck, because I also see some black yuckiness there in the form of a Demonic Tutor and a Mind Twist, so that's really powerful stuff. And also the blue power, and actually the whole power 9 is represented in this deck. And there next to the lands on the right, I see 4 bolts and 4 chains. So I don't think this is an easy deck to play against. It looks actually pretty cool, and I think it can inflict some serious damage. So I'm really looking forward to see these two extraordinary decks battle against each other. So let's quickly go to game number 1. Game number 1, and it is the Frost Giant player Joep sitting on the right, and the player with the Lance deck sitting on the left, Koos. And look at that first turn here, playing that Granite Gargoyle turn 1 with that double Mox. Really nice. And what can Koos do? Also playing a Mox, playing a Trop, and also has a turn 1 creature, and his creature is the Simbat, which can be really useful in his deck because he has so many lands. Attack here from the Gargoyle means that Koos is going to 18, and there's a second one. So that means 2 Granite Gargoyles in 2 turns. Ooh, that's unfortunate here for Koos, using the Simbat and finding a Regrove instead of a land. He is able to play a Mace of If. He plays with a full playset, so he's able to stop one of those Gargoyles. He does get 2 damage, and he goes to 16. And then the last card of Joep is a Time Walk. And what can he do? Finding a Strip Mine. That's not too bad, because now he can strip the Mace, attacking again, and he's on 12. And we see a little glitch here. And what actually happened, we lost part of the connection while we were streaming. And what has happened so far is Joep has just had another attack. So that means Koos is on 8 now. And as you can see, Koos has played Sylvan Library in the meanwhile, and 2 Mishra's Factories. And obviously the Sylvan works really well with the Simbats. But, you know, I think what Koos now needs is a solution to stop these Gargoyles from hurting him. And he doesn't seem to have it. So he's on 8, as you can see there when you look at the dice. So now he's on 4 after the 4 damage. And he can now look at his top 3 cards. And obviously putting a land second probably so that he can activate his Sinbad. But he needs Maze of Ifs now. If he can find at least one Maze of If, then that can buy him some time. And activating the Sinbad and finding a Taiga there. Playing it out. And I believe that Joop is empty-handed, by the way. Playing a fast bond. And that's the thing with these cards that, oh, this is interesting. I like this. He has to play that Wheel of Fortune, which is great news for Joop, having a red deck with 4 bolts and 4 chains. And he just gets 7 fresh cards because he was empty. But Koos has no choice. It's either playing the wheel and at least having a chance to stay alive, or not playing the wheel and die here. And this is still game 1. So if he loses this, he gets another game. So he hasn't lost a match yet. And as you can see, I've kind of slowed down the pace. So this is normal speed. Usually these games, I fast forward these games. Oh, and this is nice, playing a Chaos Orb. So are we going to see a flip? I think he has to. Probably is going to wait until combat to do that. And I think that Joop also plays with Shatter. So he's activating his orb now. Will there be a Shatter? Yes, there is a Shatter. Oh, and that means game 1 is done. And yeah, Koos didn't really stand a chance in that first game. So let's hope he can do better in game number 2. Game number 2 is about to start. And the player on the left playing with the Lance deck gets to start after losing that first match. And a very quick match where I kind of feel that the Lance deck wasn't really working up to full speed. I believe it can do much better when you look at the list. I also understand that it had actually has had some results. And this is a pretty good start with a fast bond. And there's an Ancestral Recall. Oh, nice, a power sink. That's pretty cool. And I mean, this is, how cool is this? You don't see these openings, you know, fast bond turn 1, double desert. There's a disenchant on that Mox Ruby. And there's a Badlands passing turn. And it's too bad that there's not really a follow-up play by the Lance deck player. And there's a Tropical Island. And a Lightning Bolt here. Means that Koos is going to 13 already. And there's the Granite Gargoyle. And I think the problem here is that Koos is just really quickly losing life here. And again, he needs something to kind of block that Gargoyle. And he's playing a Fireball. Okay, that works. Playing a Fireball works. And he plays a Demonic Tutor. So he's cracking the Lotus and he's using that Tutor to find an Ancestral Recall. But of course he had to sacrifice his Lotus and his Demonic Tutor to do that. Still has 1 mana floating then, a black mana I believe. And of course with the fast bond he can play extra lands out. Thinking about what he can do. And he plays a Mace of If. No, he doesn't. He decides not to. I think that's a good decision because in Old School there are hardly any creatures with haste, and I don't think there's a creature with haste in Joop's deck. And Joop, oh wow, this is a very powerful sideboard card. Bad Moon here, and Bad Moon is bad news for Koos. But I do believe he has a Disenchant in hand actually. Playing a book, and now he has to choose what should I do. Should I get rid of the book or of the Bad Moon? But now I'm starting to doubt if he has a Disenchant. It's hard for me to see. I thought he drew it. And he is finding a Sylvan Library. So that happened. That works. And there's that Disenchant. So deciding to disenchant the book instead of the Blood Moon. And he's very unlucky here that Joop has that second tome in his hand. But now he's playing an orb and he's going to flip. So let's go to slow-mo. And there is the flip on the tome. And let's see. And I always find it interesting to see all these different flipping techniques. Bam! Oh, nice. For a moment I thought it was going to bounce off. But he hits the tome. And let's see, but already his hand is a little bit, it's fuller than it was. So finding that first creature threat here in the form of a granite gargoyle. And the gargoyles are really winning the match so far. And Coast goes to 10. And I do see a Maze of If there, but I mean, he needs to get rid of that Blood Moon first. And another attack going to 8. And he really, he needs a Mirror Universe. Another attack going to 6. And that means that he's going to 3. And another, and that's it. That's game. That's it. I feel like, game 2 was a little bit more exciting than game 1, definitely. But it looks like the land stack never really got anywhere, never really got to show its full potential in both of these games. But this is a victory for the Frosty Goodness deck. Is it Frosty Good Stuff? Frosty Goodness? I have no idea. But the deck with the Frost Giants and the cool creatures. Very nice to see these two flavorful decks playing against each other. Unfortunately, it wasn't as exciting as I usually hope when I'm going to record these matches. But this was round number 3 of the Frost Giant Cup, the second edition here in Hilversum, the Netherlands. If you'd like to see more games of the Frost Giant Cup, keep an eye on this channel because I will be posting weekly matches all the way up to the finals of this old school tournament. And if you haven't seen the previous games, you can click on the videos that are appearing right now on the screen, or you can go to the channel and check out the Frost Giant Cup playlist where you will see all the matches. For now, thank you for watching this episode of Timmy Talks, and if you'd like to help the channel, you can subscribe, like, leave a comment, and share these videos with your friends. Thank you for watching this episode, and see you next time.
Icketus, ficketus, sumba, kazee.